For 3 years, he believed she was gone, buried, lost to fate. So why, on a bitter winter night, does he hear her footsteps above the ballroom? Why does her name rise to his lips like a prayer he thought he'd forgotten? And why does the truth, when he finally finds it, threaten to destroy every lie society lives by? Before you meet her, know this. Some loves do not fade. They wait. They suffer. They endure. This is their story. Chapter 1. The Wound. The winter wind scraped against the stone walls of Ashdown Manor. Like a warning, sharp, cold, relentless, it carried with it the distant howls of the moors and the soft rattle of brittle branches brushing against the window panes. The house itself seemed to shrink under the weight of the season, just as Evelyn Ashdown had spent her entire life shrinking beneath the roof that should have sheltered her. She stood barefoot on the icy floorboards of the upstairs corridor, too afraid to move, too afraid to speak, too afraid to breathe in a way that displeased the woman who ruled this house with soft words and sharpened smiles. Lady Cassandra Ashdown, her stepmother, her captor long before Evelyn understood what captivity meant. Evelyn. Cassandra's voice drifted from the drawing room below, warm, cultured, beautifully modulated, the kind of voice all of London praised. "Come down at once, dear. We must speak." Evelyn exhaled slowly. She was 19 now, but the fear had not aged with her. It had calcified, traveling down her spine like cold iron. It forced her feet forward on command. With each step down the sweeping staircase, she smoothed the plain fabric of her gown the one servant, Mary, had secretly mended for her. She had long stopped owning clothes of her own. She paused at the bottom step. Her stepmother lounged by the fire, her gown a cascade of emerald silk, her hair pinned in perfect auburn curls. On the chaise beside her sat Clara, Evelyn's stepsister 2 years older, far more carefully loved, and the only person Evelyn had once naively hoped would be her friend. The hope had not survived the first winter. "You called for me, stepmother," Evelyn said softly, her hands clasped behind her back, careful not to tremble. Cassandra lifted her gaze, her expression crafted into gentle pity. "It has come to my attention," she began, "that your presence here is troubling for Clara." Clara sniffed, pressing a lace cloth to her nose. "It is humiliating, Mama. People ask about her. They wonder what we intend to do with her. They say she is neither servant nor family. It is disgraceful." Evelyn lowered her eyes. It was the same speech, slightly reworded, that she had heard every month for years. Cassandra sighed delicately. "We are hosting a gathering this evening. Influential families, people of true consequence." A flicker of warmth bloomed in Evelyn's chest. Did they want her to participate? To finally be seen? Included? But Cassandra's next words crushed the hope before it fully formed. "You will not leave your room." Clara smirked. "Obviously." Evelyn swallowed. "Of course." Cassandra rose from the chaise, gliding toward her with the grace of a swan and the cruelty of a blade. She reached out and tucked a stray strand of Evelyn's hair behind her ear, an intimate gesture that felt like a threat. "You must understand, darling," she murmured. "You are not ready for society. You never will be. You were not raised for it." Not raised for it. Because you raised me, Evelyn thought. Because you shaped me into someone invisible. But she said nothing. Silence had been her survival. Cassandra's smile sharpened. "Good. You know your place. Run along." Evelyn turned toward the stairs just as a carriage rumbled into the drive, its wheels slicing through the frost-covered gravel. Clara rushed to the window. "Oh, is that him? Mama, is that him? The Duke?" Evelyn froze. The Duke. Her breath stilled. Dorian Ravenswood, Duke of Garrick, the man whose voice she once memorized, whose kindness at 16 had felt like sunlight touching a girl kept in shadows, whose promise, "I will return for you one day." Evelyn had been the first warmth she'd ever been offered. He never came back. She had spent 3 years convincing herself he had forgotten her, that she meant nothing, that the moment they shared in the orchard when he had lifted her chin and said softly, "You deserve a world far larger than this one," had been just a fleeting kindness. But the trembling in her hands betrayed her. "Clara," Cassandra fixed her daughter's curls. "Compose yourself. The Duke is the most eligible bachelor in England, and he is coming here." Evelyn's heart lurched. "Here, to this house, tonight, for you," Cassandra added, eyes shining with ambition. "He is coming for you, Clara." The word sliced Evelyn open. She felt the room sway slightly as Clara beamed. her vanity glowing brighter than the firelight. Cassandra continued, I wrote to him personally. He has been intrigued by the idea of a match. A match with Clara. The world fell silent. Her Dorian, was to meet Clara tonight, and she, Evelyn, would be locked away in her small, bare room upstairs, unseen and unheard, just as she always had been. Her throat tightened. Does he even remember me? Did he ever truly care? But she had no right to these questions, no right to any emotion. Evelyn, Cassandra said casually, you will make yourself scarce before he enters. Of course, she ascended the stairs, each step heavy, dragging pieces of her heart behind her. As she turned into the corridor, her vision blurred. He had forgotten her. That much was clear. 3 years of silence had already told her as much. But seeing him arrive for Clara was a wound so deep she felt it physically. Inside her room, she closed the door with trembling fingers. The walls felt smaller than usual. A soft knock tapped at the wood. Mary, the servant, slipped in. Her eyes widened when she saw Evelyn's face. Oh, lovey, what did they do now? Evelyn forced a smile. Nothing that has not been done before. Mary shook her head, tears gathering. You deserve better than this. Evelyn sat on the edge of her bed. Deserving has never mattered here. Outside, she heard the carriage door open, boots stepping onto the gravel, a deep voice greeting her stepmother politely. His voice, warm, familiar, a voice that once soothed the ache inside her chest. Evelyn pressed a hand to her heart. 3 years ago, he had been the first person to tell her she mattered. Tonight, he would look upon Clara with interest. She closed her eyes. It should not hurt this much, but it did. It hurt, like the winter wind itself had reach, and fingers, and a cruel whisper that said, You were always meant to be forgotten. Her stepmother's footsteps echoed downstairs, followed by delighted laughter, fake, sweet, practiced. Mary squeezed Evelyn's hand. One day, they'll regret this. You wait and see. Evelyn shook her head gently. Hope is a luxury I cannot afford. But even as she said it, even as she forced her breathing calm, a truth stirred inside her. Tonight changed something. She didn't know why. She didn't know how. But something in the air, in the Duke's return, in the way the winter wind pressed against the panes, it whispered that destiny had shifted direction. Not gently, not kindly, but undeniably. And the last thought Evelyn had before the chapter of her life cracked open and spilled into another was this. If he sees me, if he remembers me, everything will unravel. Chapter 2. Return and Collision. The evening descended slowly upon Ashdown Manor, dipping the estate in a velvet dusk that flickered with lantern light and rising breaths of frost. Carriages lined the gravel, each one polished to a mirror sheen as footmen straightened their coats and lifted lanterns to guide their employers inside. Inside the manor, the grand hall glowed alive with chatter and perfume and lace. Everything Evelyn had been taught she did not belong to. But tonight, behind the walls of the small upstairs room, something in her refused to sink quietly into the shadows. Not when he was here. Below, the double doors opened again. The Duke of Garrick entered. Not the memory. Not the gentle young man she once knew. Not the dream she had carried in secret. But the man himself. Dorian Ravenswood stood tall, shoulders broader than Evelyn remembered, his presence slicing through the room like a blade cloaked in velvet. He wore his title as though it weighed 1,000 stones, and yet there was a tension in his jaw, an exhaustion not even power could hide. His obsidian coat caught the light. His gloves were immaculate. His dark hair framed a face more severe than the boy who once whispered promises under an orchard tree. His eyes, those striking storm-blue eyes, swept over the hall with a quiet edge of impatience. He had changed, deeply, painfully, and yet Evelyn saw what the others did not. Something haunted him. Lady Cassandra glided forward with false warmth. Your Grace, what an honor. Dorian bowed respectfully, though a faint tightness crossed his gaze as if he smelled the dishonesty in the air. Lady Ashdown, he said, voice deeper now, rougher at the edges. The honor is mine. Clara stepped forward, cheeks flushed with excitement. Your Grace, she curtsied prettily, carefully practiced. I am delighted you accepted our invitation. Dorian's eyes moved to her for the briefest moment. Polite, assessing, unmoved. He felt nothing, or perhaps he was searching for something he did not find. Thank you, Lady Clara, he replied. Cassandra beamed, sought his feed. But Dorian's gaze drifted restless, searching for something that wasn't there, something he somehow expected, as if his soul recognized an absence before his mind did. Upstairs, Evelyn pressed her ear lightly against her door. It was wrong, shameful, pathetic even. But she could not stop herself. She heard Clara's saccharine laugh, Cassandra's orchestrated charm, and the deep, measured timbre of Dorian's voice. He is here for her. You are nothing to him now. She stepped back, wrapping her arms around herself. Her reflection in the small window was faint, nearly swallowed by the night. She remembered the last time she saw him. She had been 16. He had been 21. They had spoken in the orchard behind the estate, an accidental meeting. She had dropped her basket of apples. He had knelt to help her gather them. Their hands had touched. He had looked at her not as a servant, not as an obligation, not as someone easily ignored, but as though she were visible. She had smiled that day, one of the few smiles she remembered having. He had smiled back, and then he promised, voice full of startling sincerity, "You deserve a world far larger than this one. One day, I will return for you, Evelyn." But he never came. Her stepmother said the Duke had realized who she truly was, a burden, an embarrassment, a nothing, and wisely chosen to forget. Evelyn forced the memory into a locked corner of her mind. She repeated the phrase that had kept her heart alive all these years. I expect nothing. I deserve nothing. I need nothing. But it wasn't true. She wanted desperately to believe she had mattered to someone. Once, even just for a moment. Downstairs, Cassandra led Dorian from guest to guest, parading Clara like a prized mare. But Dorian was distracted, uneasy, watching the staircase, as if expecting someone to descend it, as if a ghost tugged on the edge of his awareness. At last, he spoke politely. "Lady Ashdown, is this your entire household?" Cassandra stiffened almost imperceptibly. "We keep a modest home, Your Grace." "No other daughters?" he asked casually. Clara gasped softly. Cassandra masked her alarm with a flawless smile. "Oh no," she laughed lightly. "Only Clara, why do you ask?" Dorian's gaze lingered on the staircase again. "I thought—" He hesitated before brushing it aside. "Forgive me. It is nothing." But it was not nothing. Something inside him twisted. A tug deep in the ribs. Like a memory he could not reach. Cassandra's eyes sharpened with warning. She led him away. But his attention drifted, again and again, to that empty staircase. Later, the guests gathered for music in the drawing room. Cassandra's plan was clear. Clara was to play the pianoforte beautifully. Dorian was meant to be impressed. A match was meant to bloom. But something entirely different happened. Clara struck the first chord delicate, well-practiced, soulless. She played quickly, eager to please, eager to stun. But her music was missing the one thing Evelyn's hidden existence had taught her to value: truth. Dorian listened politely, but his gaze remained unfocused, drifting, searching, until soft footsteps in the hallway above, barely audible, barely there, but he heard them. His head lifted. A flicker of recognition crossed his face, sharp, electric, painful. Cassandra noticed. Her heart jolted with panic. She excused herself under the pretense of checking on the servants and glided upstairs silently, her fury simmering. At Evelyn's door, she did not knock. She entered without permission. Evelyn shot to her feet. "Stepmother? I thought I was—" Cassandra slammed the door, her whisper venomous. "What exactly do you think you are doing?" Evelyn stepped back, startled. "Nothing. I was only—" "You are listening." Cassandra's eyes blazed. "He noticed." "Who?" "The Duke," Cassandra hissed. "He looked toward the stairs every time you so much as breathed." Evelyn froze. Her heart trembled. "He looked?" "Do not delude yourself," Cassandra snapped. "He is here for Clara, and you will not ruin this for us." She grabbed Evelyn's wrist hard enough to bruise and dragged her across the room. "Stay here. Stay silent. Do not even cast a shadow." She locked the door from the outside. Evelyn stood trembling. Tears slipped down. Quiet, but scalding. He looked toward the stairs. "For me? No. That is impossible. He forgot you." He must have. She sank onto her bed, clutching the blanket to her chest as the music downstairs faded. Seconds passed. Minutes. An hour. Silence. Then, soft footsteps. Note Cassandra's, not Clara's. Slower. Heavier. Evelyn's heart thundered. Her door handle turned. She gasped, but the lock held. A pause. A breath. A presence waiting on the other side. Then a whisper barely audible through the wood. "Evelyn?" Her entire world stopped. She pressed a hand to her mouth to keep herself silent. A beat of silence. A shuddered breath from the hall. Dorian whispered again, voice raw, disbelieving. "I know you are there. Please say something." Her tears came silently, trembling down her cheeks. She reached for the door, stopped, pulled her hand back with a soft sob. She couldn't. She was nothing. She was forbidden. She was locked away like a shameful secret. He should not care. He should not remember. He should not want. His palm pressed lightly to the door. A fragile, aching sound escaped him. Cassandra's voice cut sharply down the hall. "Your Grace, that part of the house is restricted. Do forgive the servants. They must have left a door unlatched." Dorian stepped back instantly, but not before whispering one last time, "Evelyn, forgive me." Then he was gone. A kniespockel. She slid to the floor. Her hands trembled violently. He remembered. He searched for her. He whispered her name like a man haunted, but she was trapped behind a locked door, unable to take even a single step toward him. And downstairs, Clara was preparing herself to become the Duchess of Garrick. Chapter Troy. The Duke's secret regret. The night had long settled by the time Dorian Ravenswood returned to his carriage. Frost laced the windows in delicate white veins. The horses stamped impatiently, and the footman awaited instruction with stiff posture. But Dorian did not speak, did not move, did not breathe properly. He stood at the open door of the carriage, staring back at Ashdown Manor, as though something inside had reached through stone and shadow to seize him by the throat. He had spent years mastering control of his reputation, of his temper, of the grief that once consumed him whole. But tonight, control slipped like water through shaking fingers. Evelyn. He had whispered her name foolishly, like a confession, like a prayer, like a man breaking apart. He had not said that name in 3 years. He had not allowed himself to. Not since. No. He shut the thought down, but the sound of her footsteps above him, quiet, hesitant, unmistakably hers, had struck him with the force of a long-buried memory rising from the grave. Lady Cassandra had lead. He felt it in his blood. He knew Evelyn was there. And that knowledge cut something inside him that had never properly healed. "Your Grace?" the footman asked softly. "Shall we depart?" Dorian dragged a hand across his jaw. "Yes," he said finally, though the word tasted like defeat. "Take me home." He entered the carriage, sinking into the dark interior as the horses began their steady rhythm down the frost-covered lane. The lantern inside swayed with each jolt of the road, casting long shadows across his face, shadows that looked too much like ghosts. Garrick House, London. 1 hour later, the Duke stormed inside, shrugging off his coat, his gloves, his restraint. His valet hurried after him, alarmed. "Your Grace, is everything quite?" "Leave me," Dorian barked. The valet obeyed instantly. Dorian moved through the silent halls like a man with a wound no one could see. When he reached his private study, he shut the door hard and locked it behind him. Only then did he allow the mask to slip. He strode to the corner cabinet, opened a hidden panel, and pulled out a small weathered box. The box he had sworn to destroy. The box he visited in weakness. The box that carried the one secret he'd never confessed. He sat heavily at the desk and opened it. Inside were letters. Dozens. Hundreds. All addressed to one name. Miss Evelyn Ashdown. Not a single one had ever been sent. His hands trembled as he picked up the topmost envelope. He knew exactly what it said. He had written these letters through sleepless nights, through guilt, through longing, through circumstances too cruel to name. But he opened it anyway. "Evelyn, I cannot forget your eyes. They follow me into every room and haunt every silence. Forgive me. Please forgive me. Dr." He shut his eyes. Another letter. "I meant to return. You must believe that. Had things been different, had I not failed you, everything would be different now." He swallowed hard. Another letter. "I heard what happened at Ashdown Manor. I tried to intervene. They refused me entry. I begged your stepmother for news. She said you wished no contact from me. I pray she lied. But if she did not, then I must live with the truth that I was too late." His jaw tightened painfully. He dragged the next letter from the pile. "If you ever need me, if you ever whisper my name, I will come. I will move heaven and earth. I will set this world aflame if it means protecting you." His fingers clenched. He had written these letters almost feverishly, each word a confession he could never speak aloud, but they were nothing compared to the last item in the box. He reached for it slowly, reverently, a small silver ribbon, the ribbon she had used to tie her hair at 16, the day in the orchard. It had fallen when she bent to pick up the apples she'd dropped. He had taken it reflexively, stupidly, tenderly. He had kept it. For 3 years. It was frayed now, touched too often. He held it between his fingers and inhaled sharply. He had been young, foolish, grieving his father, furious at the world. He had gone abroad to settle estates, determined to return for her, to protect her, to free her. He'd promised himself that the moment he was worthy of her, worthy of any good thing, he would return. But when he finally did, he learned she had been erased. Lady Cassandra had told him Evelyn left willingly, that she had chosen to go, that she wanted no contact. He had believed her, like a fool. Tonight, hearing her footsteps, whispering her name, he knew he had been lied to. And that realization split him open. He slammed the letters shut and rose abruptly, pushing the chair back. He needed answers. He needed the truth. He stopped, because a memory crashed through him like thunder. 3 years ago, Ashdown Orchard, sunset filtering through apple blossoms. Evelyn stood before him, hair falling in dark waves, clutching her basket of fruit as though it were armor. She had been pale back then too, but with innocence, not sorrow. He remembered saying softly, "You are unhappy here." Her eyes widened, hurt and revelation woven together. "My stepmother does not prefer me," she had whispered, "nor does anyone else." The tremble in her voice had broken something inside him. He had reached for her chin carefully, gently. "You deserve the world, Evelyn Ashdown." Her breath caught. He leaned closer, not touching, but close enough to feel the warmth of her skin. "When I return," he swore quietly, "all of this will change." Her lips parted. "What if you never return?" she asked. He smiled back then, young, foolish, arrogant in his certainty. "Then I will have broken the first promise I ever meant with my whole heart." Now, alone in his study, Dorian pressed the heels of his hands to his eyes. "God forgive me," he breathed. "I broke it." Every day since, he had punished himself with silence, with letters, with haunting memories that crept through him without mercy. He poured himself a drink, then set it down untouched. He didn't want numbness. He wanted truth. He wanted her. At that exact moment, miles away in her tiny locked room, Evelyn sat awake, knees drawn to her chest, unable to shake the image of him standing outside her door, whispering her name like a man in torment. "He remembers me. He came looking for me. Why? Why now?" Her mind raced. Her heart ached. Her breath trembled. Because she remembered something too. Not the orchard, not the promise, but the night years ago when she had been banished from the main house for speaking out of turn. She had cried quietly in the servants' corridor, believing no one could hear. Dorian had found her. He had knelt beside her, his voice barely above a murmur. "I see you, Evelyn. Even if they pretend you do not exist." She had carried that moment in her chest for years, like a smuggled flame. Now that flame had sparked again, dangerous, forbidden, impossible. She whispered into the darkness, "Why did you come back, Dorian?" Back in London, the Duke paced his study like a caged storm. He had been searching for Evelyn ever since the orchard. Before he left England, he attempted to visit her. He had been denied. He wrote, sent gifts, sent inquiries, only to be told, "She wants nothing from you." She left without forwarding address. "She is unwell. She is gone. She is dead." His hands trembled. Dead. He had believed it for a year, and it had nearly destroyed him. Now, she was alive. She had been in that house the entire time. A prisoner. A secret. A ghost kept behind a locked door. His entire world tilted. And for the first time in years, something inside him roared awake. He would not lose her again. Not to lies. Not to Cassandra. Not to society. Not to fate. He whispered into the dim firelight, "I will find you, Evelyn. And this time, nothing will keep me from you." He closed the silver ribbon in his fist and made a vow to the darkness. "I will undo the past. I will tear down every wall between us. I will be the man you deserved." His jaw clenched. His heart cracked open, and his obsession, once buried, rose to the surface with scorching clarity. He would see her again, speak to her again, free her again, even if he had to burn half of England to make it so. Chapter 4. Rising Tension. Morning light crept through Evelyn's small attic window, pale and hesitant, as though uncertain it had permission to enter. She woke. Without having truly slept, her dreams had been a jumbled tangle of whispered names, locked doors, and the Duke's voice lingering like warm breath against her memory. "Evelyn, forgive me." Those words haunted every exhale she drew. She sat up slowly, hugging her blanket to her chest, as though it might shield her from the confusion that throbbed beneath her ribs. Dorian Ravenswood remembered her. He sought her. He spoke her name with a pain she did not understand. Why now? Why, after 3 years? Why, when she had finally accepted her invisibility? Her thoughts troubled her long enough that she barely heard the footsteps approaching her door. Heavy, decisive, unfamiliar. Note Cassandra, not Clara, not Mary. The lock rattled. Evelyn stiffened. The door opened, and in stepped a man she had never seen before. Tall, broad-shouldered, cloaked in a winter-dark coat dripping frost at the hem. A shock of raven-black curls framed his high cheekbones, and intelligent hazel eyes scanned the room with swift, cutting precision. He was not handsome in the polished, delicate way London adored. He was striking, fierce, undeniable. He removed his gloves slowly. "Miss Evelyn Ashdown," he said softly, his voice a low, cultured drawl. "I have come a very long way to find you." Evelyn pressed a hand to the bedpost for balance. "Forgive me," she whispered. "But who are you?" He bowed, not mockingly, not lazily, but with a reverence she had never been given by anyone in this house. "I am Professor Adrian Thorne, Fellow of King's College London, explorer, scholar, patron of the Society for Literacy and Feminine Education." His eyes warmed as he studied her face. "And the world has been most unkind not to mention your existence in its books." Evelyn blinked, uncomprehending. "My existence?" Adrian Thorne nodded slowly, stepping into the dim light. "I read your essays." She froze. "My what?" He smiled, a slow, genuine, astonished smile. "Your essays, Miss Ashdown. The ones you submitted anonymously to the London Review. The ones signed only with the initials EA. The ones that left half the academic board arguing for hours." Evelyn's lips parted. She had written those essays secretly, late into the night, in stolen scraps of paper Mary smuggled into her room. She had mailed them under a false name to avoid Cassandra's wrath, never dreaming anyone might read them, much less remember them. "You wrote of equality," Adrian murmured, "of women deserving education, of the ways society cages brilliance because it fears disruption." Evelyn's heart pounded. I didn't think anyone—" "I recognized your mind immediately." His voice softened. "It would be an honor to sponsor your work." Her lips trembled. "Sponsor?" He stepped closer, the air between them shifting. "I want you to write for me, for my research society, for England. You have a mind this world desperately needs." Tears gathered in her eyes, not from fear, but from a kind of stunned, disbelieving hope. No one had ever looked at her like that, with admiration, with respect, with recognition. Not even Dorian. The thought stabbed her unexpectedly. Adrian saw the flicker in her expression. "Does this frighten you?" "No," she whispered. "It surprises me." He smiled gently. "Good. Then allow me to surprise you further." He held out a sealed card. "I am hosting a private gathering this afternoon. Intellectuals, thinkers, progressives. Come, speak, or simply listen. It will do you good to see a world beyond these walls." Evelyn stared at the card with shaking hands. A gathering, an invitation, a door into a life she had never been allowed to imagine. But before she could respond, a shrill voice broke the fragile moment. "Miss Evelyn does not attend gatherings." Cassandra swept into the room, eyes blazing with fury, thinly disguised as pleasantness. "And Professor Thorne," she added with saccharine disdain, "your presence here is inappropriate without my consent." Adrian's jaw tightened. "I am not in the business of seeking consent to uplift brilliance." Cassandra bristled. Evelyn felt Adrian's protective gaze shift toward her, bold, defiant, almost dangerous. Cassandra turned her rage toward Evelyn. "You will not attend," she said sharply. "You will remain where you belong." Adrian stepped forward, voice low and lethal. "Miss Ashdown belongs nowhere near cages." The tension thickened. Cassandra looked ready to unleash an explosion, but footsteps echoed down the hall, due north, sharp, commanding. Dorian Ravenswood. The Duke appeared in the doorway, and for the first time, he saw Evelyn in full daylight. He froze. The world froze with him. His breath caught as though struck by a blow. He looked at her, not like a ghost, not like a memory, but like a man staring at something holy that had been ripped from him and now returned bruised, fragile, and radiant in her quiet suffering. He whispered, barely audible, "Evelyn." Her voice died in her throat. Adrian turned, curiosity sharpening. "You are the Duke, then," he said calmly. Dorian didn't answer. His entire existence had narrowed to Evelyn in that moment. He stepped inside slowly, eyes sweeping over her room, the cracked window, the threadbare blanket, the bruises on her wrist. Cassandra's grip had left. Something murderous flickered in his gaze. "You live like this?" he asked hoarsely, voice breaking. Cassandra rushed forward. "Your Grace, forgive the disarray. Evelyn is accustomed to simpler comforts." Dorian turned his head, slowly, dangerously. His eyes, the same storm-blue Evelyn once found such warmth in, were now cold steel. "Do not lie to me," he said. Cassandra stiffened. Adrian stepped slightly closer to Evelyn, protective. Dorian's jaw sharpened. "And who precisely are you?" he demanded. "Someone who sees her worth," Adrian replied coolly, "and intends to give her the future she deserves." A silence so charged it buzzed in the air. Evelyn felt the tension like a hand at her throat. Dorian took one step forward, not toward Adrian, but toward her. "Evelyn," he murmured, voice raw, exposed, stripped of all Duke-like command. "Why did you not come downstairs last night?" Her breath hitched. Cassandra interceded quickly. She was unwell. Dorian didn't take his eyes off Evelyn. "Is that true?" Evelyn's lips parted. She wished to speak. She wished to lie. She wished to disappear. She wished to scream. But no words came. Her silence was answer enough. Dorian inhaled sharply, as though absorbing a pain that was not his wound but hers. Then he turned sharply to Cassandra. "You kept her hidden." Cassandra smiled coldly. "She is of no relevance to society." Dorian's voice dropped into something deadly. "She is of relevance to me." The room erupted into stillness. Evelyn's pulse hammered. Adrian's gaze sharpened. Cassandra's face pallid. "No." Evelyn whispered the word before she meant to. Dorian looked at her, startled by her first spoken word in his presence. "No?" he repeated quietly. She swallowed hard. "I am not anything to you." Pain flickered in Dorian's eyes. Real, unguarded pain. Adrian stepped closer to her. "Miss Ashdown is under my protection now," he said calmly. "She will attend today's gathering." Dorian's jaw tightened. "You presume too much." "And you presume she belongs to you?" Adrian countered. Evelyn's voice trembled. I want to go." Cassandra gasped. Dorian stilled. Adrian nodded, triumphant. Dorian stepped closer, voice low with a bitterness he barely concealed. "You trust him?" Evelyn forced herself to meet his eyes. "I trust the chance he offers." A muscle in Dorian's jaw jumped. "Then I will also attend," he said quietly. Adrian lifted a brow. "This is not your sphere, Your Grace." "It is," Dorian replied. "If she is there." The air crackled. Two men. One woman. A lifetime of wounds between them. Cassandra suddenly paled, realizing she was losing control. "No," she snapped. "Evelyn will not attend with either of you." She will," Dorian said coldly. "And she already chose," Adrian murmured. All eyes turned to Evelyn. Fear swelled in her chest. She had never been allowed a choice. She had never been given one. Her voice shook. I want to go." Dorian's eyes softened with devastation and pride in the same breath. Adrian's gaze warmed with admiration. Cassandra looked ready to collapse. And Evelyn, quiet Evelyn, forgotten Evelyn, thrown away. Evelyn felt something shift inside her, like a locked door creaking open after years of darkness. A new world had arrived, and with it, two men watching her as though she were the axis around which they suddenly revolved. Chapter 5. Public Confrontation. The grand foyer of Professor Adrian Thorne's London townhouse glittered with intellect rather than wealth. The walls were lined with shelves of books instead of portraits. The chandeliers hung with crystal but not ostentation. And the air hummed not with gossip but with thought. Evelyn stepped inside, her breath catching at the sheer difference from Ashdown Manor. Here, nothing felt cruel. Nothing felt watching. Nothing felt like a trap. It felt possible. Mary had helped her dress in a simple but elegant dove-gray gown, borrowed from a sympathetic maid. It did not sparkle, it did not cling, it did not shout, but it fit her. Her, not Cassandra's ghost of her. Adrian greeted her at the doorway with a warm, genuine smile, a scholar greeting a colleague, not a peasant girl. "You look like yourself," he murmured. Evelyn felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I do not know who that is." "Then we shall discover her together." Before she could answer, the Duke arrived. The room shifted perceptibly. Heads turned. Conversations faltered. Power had entered the space, wearing black velvet and a storm for a gaze. Dorian Ravenswood stepped inside like a man stepping onto a battlefield. His eyes found Evelyn instantly, and the world narrowed. He walked toward her slowly, so slowly it made every breath in the room tremble. She felt it. The weight of him. The intensity. The regret sharpened into longing. Evelyn. Just her name, but it held 3 years of suffering. "Your Grace," she whispered. He looked at her gown, her hair, the faint trace of hope in her posture, and he swallowed hard, visibly shaken. "You should have never been hidden," he said quietly. "Not from them. Not from me." Her breath hitched. He took another step. Adrian stepped forward, placing himself gently but deliberately between them. "Miss Ashdown is my guest," Adrian said, voice polite but edged in steel. "Allow her space." Dorian's jaw clenched. A tempest flashed behind his gaze. Evelyn felt the conflict like a current between the three of them. But before anything else could be said, a woman in a sapphire gown approached with a delighted gasp. "Miss Ashdown, the Miss E.A., the anonymous essayist of the London Review?" Evelyn's eyes widened. "You know my essays?" The woman laughed softly. "Know them? My entire reading circle argues over them weekly." More guests gathered. More voix. More admiration. Evelyn's chest tightened with disbelief. They knew her. They valued her words. They saw her. Adrian leaned in, his voice warm. "You see, Miss Ashdown, your mind precedes you." Dorian stood at her left, chest rising with restrained pride and anguish. "You wrote essays?" he whispered, stunned and impressed. Evelyn nodded faintly. "I would have read every word," he murmured, "had I known you were alive." Her heart twisted. Before the moment could deepen, the doors burst open. Gasps filled the entry hall. Cassandra, Clara, and 3 of London's most vicious society matrons. Evelyn felt her blood turn cold. Cassandra's voice rang out like a whip. "There she is. The Ashdown disgrace." The room froze. Adrian stiffened beside Evelyn. Dorian's head snapped toward Cassandra, rage igniting instantly. Cassandra marched forward, her face bright with the kind of fury fed by fear. "How dare you leave the manor?" she hissed. "How dare you present yourself among decent society?" Evelyn stepped back, trembling. Adrian moved in front of her, blocking Cassandra's advance. "Lady Ashdown," Adrian said coolly, "your behavior is inappropriate." "Inappropriate?" Cassandra's voice cracked with smug cruelty. "She is the illegitimate, penniless burden my late husband inflicted upon me. An embarrassment, a charity case, practically a servant. And you parade her here as if she belongs?" Evelyn's cheeks burned. Her knees weakened. Gasps rippled through the room. Whispering started. A few people recoiled. Adrian turned to the crowd, voice steady. "Miss Ashdown is a published intellectual." "Anonymously," Cassandra shrieked, "because she is too ashamed to show her face." Evelyn felt something inside her crack. Not her dignity, but years of swallowed hurt rising like a tide. Dorian stepped forward, voice low. "Lethal. Say one more word," he warned Cassandra, "and I will personally drag you out of this house." Cassandra turned on him. "Your Grace, do not soil yourself by defending her. You are here for Clara." Clara curtsied prettily, trying to align herself with Dorian's gaze. "Yes, Your Grace, we had such a lovely conversation yesterday." "We did not," he said flatly. Clara's face crumbled. Dorian took Evelyn's hand, gently, protectively, possessively, and stepped between her and every staring eye in the room. "Miss Evelyn Ashdown," he announced clearly to the entire gathering, "is under my personal protection." A thunderbolt of murmurs. Cassandra went pale. The matrons gasped. But it wasn't enough. Cassandra's voice, trembling with spite, rose again. "Protection? She should be grateful you even remember her name. She was nothing in my home. Nothing to her father. Nothing to society. And Evelyn flinched, and in that single moment, that crack of emotional pain, the Duke hesitated. Just 1 second. One small, fatal second. He looked at Evelyn's face, saw her hurt, and faltered not because of uncertainty, but because he suddenly realized the depth of damage Cassandra had inflicted. His silence, that one heartbeat of silence, was enough. Cassandra seized it like a weapon. "See?" she crowed. "Even the Duke will not contradict me. I speak the truth. She is no one." The room fell into horrified quiet. Evelyn stood motionless. Dorian opened his mouth too late. "No, but the damage was done." Evelyn's hands fell to her sides. Her breath shook. Something fragile inside her, something that had dared to hope, fractured with a quiet, devastating snap. Adrian stepped beside her instantly. "Miss Ashdown," he said softly, "you owe these people nothing." She lifted her chin. Tears burned, but none fell. "I know," she whispered. Clara smirked quietly, triumphant. Cassandra folded her arms, and Evelyn walked out, not with weakness, but with a quiet, trembling dignity. Dorian reached for her. "Evelyn, please." But she stepped out of his reach. Her voice was small but steady. "You had a moment to silence her, to end this, and you hesitated." His chest tightened with shame. "Evelyn, She shook her head once, firmly. "You should have been the first to say I am someone. But you weren't." And she left the room, leaving Dorian bleeding quietly from a wound he had inflicted on himself. The crowd swallowed the Duke of Garrick's guilt like hungry wolves. Adrian followed her out the door. Dorian remained frozen, guilt tearing into him with slow, merciless teeth. Cassandra smiled. For the first time, Evelyn had walked away from him. Chapter 6. Revelations. Evelyn did not remember leaving the drawing room. Only the feel of her own heartbeat pounding in her ears as she slipped down a side corridor of Adrian's townhouse and pushed open a narrow door. Cold evening air rushed over her. She stepped into a small walled garden, bare branches etched against the winter sky, stone benches dusted with frost. London hummed faintly beyond the brick, but here it was quiet enough to hear her own breath. She gripped the back of a bench, knuckles white. He hesitated. The words looped through her mind like a cruel refrain. Not Cassandra's cruelty. She had expected that. Not the matron's disgust. That too was familiar. But Dorian's silence. That one, single, fatal pause had cut deeper than every insult. "Evelyn." She flinched. She hadn't heard the door open, but she knew his voice even now when it frayed at the edges. She did not turn. "Please," he said softly. "Do not walk away from me again." She almost laughed. It came out as a ragged exhale. "I did not walk away," she said, staring at the dead rose bushes. "You let me be dragged." Silence. Then, the crunch of boots on gravel. "May I come closer?" he asked. 3 years ago, she would have said yes without thinking. Now, she considered the question like a negotiation. "At least you ask now," she murmured. "Do as you please, Your Grace. You always have." He stopped a few paces behind her, as if some instinct told him not to crowd. "I deserve that," he said quietly. "You deserve worse." A breath. Not quite a laugh. Not quite a sob. "I know." The wind scraped along the garden wall. Evelyn turned at last. He looked older in the half-light. Not in years, but in wear. Haunted. The perfect Duke's mask he wore in society had fallen away, leaving something raw. "I need you to understand," he began. She cut him off with a slight lift of her hand. "No, you need to understand." Her voice shook, but it did not break. "You are a duke. Your words decide fates. Your silence, in that room, decided mine." His jaw tightened. His eyes darkened with shame. "I had no right to ask anyone to believe in me," she went on. "But if there was one person who could have stopped her, who could have said she is not no one, it was you, and you didn't." "I was stunned," he said hoarsely. "Seeing you there alive after everything I'd been told." "Told what?" she snapped. "That I ran away? That I died? That I hoard myself for coin? I have heard all the versions Cassandra invented for other people. Which one did she give you?" His head jerked back, as if struck. "Dead," he said quietly. "She told me you were dead." The garden blurred. Evelyn steadied herself on the bench. "She told you I was dead." He nodded once. The first time I returned from the continent 3 years ago, I went to Ashdown Manor, he said, words coming faster, as if a dam had cracked. I asked for you. She refused me entry, said you were unwell, that you didn't want to see me, I wrote. I sent inquiries. 3 months later she summoned me and informed me you had taken ill, that you died quickly, that there was nothing to be done. He looked away, swallowing hard. I mourned you, Evelyn. I stood in a church with a name spoken and no coffin, and I believed I had killed you with my delay. Her fingers dug into the stone. Why didn't you demand proof? She whispered. Why didn't you tear her lies apart then, instead of letting them bury me? His eyes flickered, full of self-loathing. Because I was a coward in grief, he said. My father had just died. The estate was drowning in debt and scandal. I was being hounded by Parliament and creditors and vultures wearing silk. I told myself Cassandra would not lie about something so grave. I told myself you had been spared the life I had failed to rescue you from. He sucked in a breath that shook. And because if you were dead, then I didn't have to face the fact that I left you there. The honesty of it hit her harder than any excuse. He wasn't dressing his failure. He was laying it bare. Still, Cassandra told me you never asked, Evelyn said quietly. That you went abroad without a word. That when she mentioned my name, you laughed. Called me a childish fancy you had outgrown. His head snapped toward her, horror etched in every line of his face. I would never— I know that now. She cut in. When you stood by my door last night and whispered my name like it hurt, I knew. But you must understand, for 3 years, I believed you were the one who threw me away. It made it easier to survive the rest. He flinched. The truth lay between them now, ugly and naked. He forced himself to ask, what else did she do? Evelyn laughed a small, bitter sound. What didn't she do? She kept my father's will from me, told me he left nothing, had me moved from the family wing to the servants' corridor because it suited my station. She forbade me from attending lessons with Clara. When she discovered I could read better than her own daughter, she took away my books. So I wrote in secret, at night, with stolen ink. She locked me in that attic when she realized I would not break if she ignored me, so she tried to make me disappear. His hands were fists at his sides now. And you never told anyone? He rasped. To whom? Evelyn asked. No one listens to a girl her own father's widow calls a burden. And the one man who might have believed me vanished across the sea and left his promise in the orchard to rot. He closed his eyes briefly, pain flickering across his features. I deserve that, he said again. Yes, she agreed, with quiet, devastating calm. You did. He opened his eyes and stepped closer, slow, as if approaching a wounded animal that might bolt. I cannot ask you to forgive what I did not do, he said, or what I failed to do. But I can tell you what you are not allowed to know. She held his gaze, wary. He reached into the inner pocket of his coat and withdrew something small and worn, a folded scrap of paper, edges frayed. He held it out to her. I carried this one with me, he said. There are more dozens in my study. Letters I wrote to you and never sent. Cowardice, yes. But also, Cassandra ensured none would reach you if I did. I can prove that too. Her fingers shook as she took the paper. It had been folded and unfolded 100 times. His handwriting swept across it, dark and elegant, slanting in places where the ink had pressed too hard. She read, Evelyn, if you ever hear that I forgot, you know that it is a lie. You grew roots in me the moment you looked at me in that orchard as though I were someone capable of goodness. I do not know how to be that man yet, but I mean to try. For you, I mean to try. Dorian. Her vision blurred. She swallowed around the knot in her throat. This, she pressed the paper to her chest, as if to steady herself. Why show me this now? Because you said I hesitated, he replied. And you are right. I did. But I have been hesitating for 3 years, between shame and action, between penance and cowardice. It ends now. He stepped closer still, his voice roughening. I cannot undo the years Cassandra stole from you. I cannot erase the night I believed her lies. But I can tell the truth now. I can use every ounce of power I once wasted to tear down what she built on your suffering. She stared at him. You think you can fix this with grand declarations? She asked, though her voice was softer now, more tired than angry. No, he said at once. I know I cannot fix it with words at all. Only with what I do next. The sincerity in his eyes was almost unbearable. She looked away, toward the dark line of the garden wall. I have lived my entire life, Under someone else's command, she said quietly. My father's neglect, Cassandra's cruelty, society's disdain, even your absence. It was another force deciding things for me. If you wish to make anything right, your grace start by understanding that I will not let you decide for me again. He bowed his head. Tell me what you want, he said. The question startled her. No one had asked her that plainly before. What did she want? She wanted her father to have loved her. She wanted Cassandra's voice silenced. She wanted to never again feel like an intruder in a room. She wanted to write without hiding. She wanted to see herself as more than a wound that kept reopening. And Dorian, she wanted him, too, in some painful, buried part of her. But not like this. Not as savior. Not as penitent duke seeking absolution in her arms. Slowly, she looked him in the eye. I want the truth, she said. All of it. From you. From Cassandra. From the will my father left that I was never allowed to read. I want to know who I am to the law, not just to your conscience. He nodded, something fierce lighting in his gaze. Then I will get it, he said. I will have your father's solicitor brought before us. I will have every document reviewed. I will drag every lie into daylight, and I will do it whether you ever look at me with anything but hatred again. Her mouth trembled. Do not flatter yourself, she whispered. I do not hate you. What then? He asked, voice barely audible. She hesitated. I don't know what to call it, she admitted. But I know this. If you fail me again, if you stand by while they try to break me once more, I will never let you speak my name again. He swallowed. You have my word, he said. No more hesitation. The door to the garden creaked open behind them. Evelyn? Adrian's voice careful. Is everything? He stepped out, stopped short at the sight of them, tension immediately rising in his shoulders. Your Grace, he said coldly. Professor, Dorian replied, equally measured. Evelyn folded the letter and slipped it into her sleeve. I asked him for the truth, she said to Adrian, forcing her voice steady. He says he will fight for it. Adrian's gaze flicked between them, reading more than either wished. Then he will have to prove it, Adrian said, eyes settling on Dorian with clear warning. Because she is not alone anymore. Dorian's jaw tightened, but he inclined his head. Good, he said quietly. Hold me to account. Someone should have, long ago. Evelyn stepped back from them both. I will not be the battleground between you, she said. If you wish to fight, fight the lies. Fight Cassandra. Fight the world that decided I was nothing. But do not fight over me as if I were a prize. Neither man spoke. She drew in a long breath. Find the will, she said to Dorian. Find the documents. Bring them to me. Then we will see if your actions match your words. She turned toward the door, every step trembling but determined. Behind her, two men watched, one bound by guilt and obsession, the other by respect and rising affection. And in the quiet wake of her departure, Dorian said into the cold, I will not fail her again. Adrian's answer was soft but edged. For her sake, he murmured, see that you don't. Because if you do, she will not be the only one you answer to. Chapter 7. The Rival's Offer. London's fog rolled in thick and silver as Adrian's carriage carried Evelyn away from the townhouse gathering. Her palms were still trembling, but her breathing had steadied. The confrontation, the humiliation, Dorian's confession, they churned inside her like storm tides without shore. Adrian sat across from her, hands folded, gaze steady but gentle. You handled yourself with extraordinary grace tonight, he said quietly. She gave a tired smile. Grace is often all a woman is allowed. No, he replied. Not you. Not anymore. The firmness in his tone startled her. Adrian Thorne was not a man of raised voices or dramatic declarations. His passion ran quieter, deeper, like the undercurrent of a river strong enough to move stone. You should have been celebrated, Adrian said. Respected, protected. Instead, you were caged. Evelyn traced the fogged carriage window with one finger. I never imagined I could belong to any world beyond that attic. You do, Adrian said. And I intend to prove it to you. She looked up. Why? She asked softly. A slow, deliberate breath left him. Because brilliance calls to me, he said. And yours has been buried under cruelty for too long. Her heartbeat stumbled. Adrian reached into his coat and retrieved a sealed envelope. This, he said, placing it gently into her hands, is from the Society for Literacy and Feminine Education. Your essays sparked enough debate that the board has voted to offer you a formal position." She gasped, quiet but sharp. "A position?" "As a contributing writer, scholar, lecturer if you choose it." Her eyes widened. "Lecture? Me?" "Why not you?" he asked. "You have the mind and the voice for it. What you lack is only freedom. Freedom I can help you claim." Her throat tightened. "What would this position require?" "Nothing more than your words," he said softly. "Your mind. Your truth. You would stay in London. You would write openly under your real name, or a chosen one. You would have patronage and a home of your own." Her fingers trembled around the envelope. A home, her own. No Cassandra, no locked doors, no being told she was nothing. Adrian leaned forward slightly, voice lower. "And if you wished companionship, you would have that too." Evelyn blinked. "Companionship?" He held her gaze. "I do not make impulsive proposals. I do not chase whims. But I have watched you, Evelyn Ashdown. I have listened to you, and I have seen the mind behind the words." Her breath caught. He continued carefully, reverently. "You are a rare woman, intelligent, compassionate, brave enough to write truth even when you were punished for it. If you choose independence, I will support it. If you choose partnership," he hesitated, "then let the words land gently. I would offer you mine." The air left her lungs. He was not on one knee. He was not promising passion or fire or reckless devotion. He was offering something else entirely. Safety, equality, a future she built, not one forced upon her. "You would marry me," she whispered. "If you wished it," he said. "Not out of desperation, but out of mutual respect. I would never cage you. I would never silence you. I would never let anyone call you nothing." Her eyes stung hot, painful. "Adrian, You need not decide now," he said softly. "You owe me nothing, but you do deserve options. The life you want should not depend on a duke's remorse or a stepmother's cruelty." She flinched, he noticed. "Forgive me," Adrian added. "I know the duke means something to you." "I don't know what he means," she whispered. "Then I will speak plainly." His voice remained gentle but unwavering. "He is a man of storms. You lived in storms your entire life. You do not need another." Her chest tightened. "You deserve peace," Adrian said. "And I can give you that. A life of the mind, work that matters, a partnership of equals. Nothing demanded, nothing taken, everything chosen." Evelyn closed her eyes. The carriage wheels hummed. London lamps flickered in passing gold. For the first time in years, her future was not a closed door, but many open ones. Adrian leaned back, giving her space. "When we arrive," he said, "you will have a guest room at my residence for as long as you need. No expectations, no obligations, only time and freedom while the Duke investigates your inheritance." Evelyn nodded slowly, overwhelmed. "Adrian," she whispered, "why are you being so kind to me?" His answer was soft, quiet, and devastating. "Because kindness is not a gift, Evelyn. It is your right. And because any man who sees you clearly would want to stand by your side." She felt warmth bloom through the deep bruises of her past. But before she could speak, the carriage jolted to a stop. Adrian frowned. "We're not at my townhouse yet," the coachman called back, voice tense. "My lord, there is someone standing in the road." Evelyn's stomach clenched. Adrian opened the door cautiously and stepped out. Evelyn followed and froze. A lone figure stood in the middle of the street, lantern light glinting off black velvet and frost. Dorian, the Duke of Garrick, his expression carved from anguish and determination. Relief flickered in his eyes the moment he saw her. Relief and something deeper, rawer, more consuming. He stepped toward them. "Evelyn," he said, voice low, "I need to speak with you." Adrian moved subtly in front of her. "You will not demand anything of her tonight," Adrian said. Dorian's gaze sharpened to ice. "Stand aside." "No." The Duke stepped closer. "I am not here to claim her. I am here because I found something and she must see it." Evelyn's heart thudded. "What did you find?" He held up a sealed document, the wax broken, the edges old. Her breath stalled. "The original will of your father," Dorian said quietly. "The one Cassandra hid. And Evelyn," he swallowed hard, "it changes everything." Her world tilted. Adrian stiffened. Dorian looked at her, not as a duke, not as a man in love, but as someone who had unearthed a truth heavy enough to alter destinies. "Let me explain," he said softly. Evelyn's pulse thundered. She stood between two worlds. A future shaped by peace, respect, and independence. A past returned in the form of a man who once broke her, and might redeem himself by tearing the lies apart. Adrian watched her carefully, offering no pressure. Dorian watched her like a man terrified of losing her again. Evelyn exhaled shakily. "Both of you," she whispered, "come inside." She stepped into the townhouse. Two men followed. Chapter 8. Heroes Humbling. The drawing room of Adrian Thorne's townhouse had never held such tension. Evelyn stood at the center of it, breath shallow, fingers trembling against the sealed will Dorian placed into her hands. Adrian stood beside her, arms crossed, protective but watchful. The Duke waited in front of her, stripped of every last layer of untouchable nobility. And for the first time in his life, he looked afraid. Afraid of her choice. Afraid of his past. Afraid of losing her again. "Evelyn," Dorian began, voice hoarse, "I must warn you the contents of that will are not merely relevant. They are explosive." She lifted her gaze. "Meaning?" "Meaning Cassandra may have committed a crime," he said bluntly. "Forgery, obstruction, possibly fraud." Adrian's eyes narrowed with interest. Evelyn opened the document with shaking fingers. Inside, not lies, not an erasure, but her name, her real name, written in her father's elegant script. "To my beloved daughter, Evelyn Ashdown. Helungs, Fros." She read on. "The sum of my liquid assets, including the bonds kept at Whitlock Bank, shall pass to her upon her 21st birthday. The cottage at Briar Hill is to become her personal property. She is to be considered my rightful heir in all matters concerning family scholarship funds and charitable concerns. Clara is to inherit jewelry and dowry provisions. My wife, Lady Cassandra Ashdown, is granted only the household allowance as is customary, and nothing more." Evelyn's world spun. Her father had not discarded her. Her father had provided for her, loved her in the only way he knew, quietly, deliberately, legally. And Cassandra had stolen everything. Every chance, every resource, every path to freedom. Evelyn's chest constricted. Adrian inhaled sharply. "By God, this is enough to have Cassandra expelled from London's social register for life." Dorian nodded grimly. "And enough to have her prosecuted." Evelyn's voice came out small. "Why didn't she give me this?" Dorian answered gently. "Because a powerless girl is easier to control." She swallowed hard, fighting the sting in her eyes. "When did you find this?" she whispered. Dorian hesitated. "An hour ago." "How?" he exhaled. "I confronted your father's former solicitor. At first he refused to speak," claimed Cassandra threatened him. "But when I threatened to bring my own lawyers and Parliament into the matter," he confessed. "Cassandra had paid him to hide the will. I forced him to hand it over." Evelyn stared at him. "You threatened Parliament?" she asked. "Yes," he said simply. "For you." Adrian's jaw flexed in surprise. Evelyn opened her mouth to speak, but the front door suddenly burst open, and Mary stumbled inside, breathless and frantic. "Miss Evelyn," she cried. "They're coming." "Who?" Evelyn asked, but the answer followed her into the room. "Cassandra, Clara." 3 social matrons, and half a dozen influential men behind them, politicians, patrons, gossips, the very voices that shaped reputation and power. Cassandra's eyes locked onto the will in Evelyn's hand. Her face went white. "You—" Her voice broke, then sharpened like a blade. "Dorian, return that at once. It belongs to me." "It belongs to Evelyn," Dorian said coldly. A gasp rippled through the room. Clara shrieked. "She's nothing! She deserves nothing!" A murmured agreement from one of the matrons. "This is absurd. She cannot inherit more than a legitimate daughter." "She is legitimate," Dorian said, voice rising with rare fury. "And Cassandra stole her inheritance." Cassandra's mask cracked. "Your Grace," she hissed, "you don't understand." "No," Dorian cut in. "I understand perfectly." The matrons glared at Evelyn with disdain. Clara sniffed dramatically. Cassandra tried to reclaim control. "This girl is an embarrassment." Keeping her hidden was an act of mercy. Evelyn flinched, but Dorian stepped forward. And then, in front of all of London's elite, in front of gossips who could ruin him with a whisper, in front of academics and nobility alike, the Duke of Garrick bowed. Not a polite dip of the head, Not a curt acknowledgement. A full, deep, reverent bow. Directly before Evelyn, gasps clawed at the air. Cassandra turned scarlet. Clara swayed with outrage. Adrian's eyes widened. Evelyn froze. "Evelyn Ashdown," Dorian said steadily, loudly, his voice carrying through every corner of the room. "I owe you an apology so vast it may take a lifetime to repay." Silence dropped like an anvil. A continued. "I did not protect you when I should have. I allowed lies to blind me. I believed a woman with a serpent's tongue over the girl who trusted me. I failed you. I failed your memory. I failed the promise I made beneath the apple trees." Evelyn's throat tightened painfully. Cassandra sputtered, "Dorian, you must stop this madness." Dorian raised his voice. "No. I will not be silent 1 second longer." He turned toward Cassandra and the crowd. Lady Cassandra Ashdown forged the narrative that this woman was unwanted, unworthy, invisible. She stole her assets. She hid her will. She locked her in an attic. And she attempted to profit by removing Evelyn entirely from society. The matrons stared in horror. The men exchanged shocked whispers. Cassandra's lip quivered with fury. "You have no proof," she choked. "I have the solicitor," Dorian said. "He is outside, and he is terrified." The door creaked. The old solicitor peeked in, trembling visibly. Dorian continued, "He has confessed everything. He will swear an affidavit in court." Cassandra's face drained of blood. Clara burst into sobs. Evelyn stood trembling, the room spinning around her. Dorian faced her again. He did not reach for her. He did not claim her. He did not demand forgiveness. He simply said, voice quiet but fierce, "You are not nothing. You never were. And I will ensure every person in this room hears it from my mouth first." The matrons exchanged horrified glances. One muttered, "He'll destroy his standing." Another whispered, "A duke kneeling to a disgraced girl? Unthinkable." But Dorian didn't care. He lifted his chin. "I will stake my title, my fortune, and my future on this truth," he declared. "Anyone who slanders her again will answer to me." The entire room reeled. Cassandra lunged forward, snarling, "You stupid girl! You ruined everything." Suddenly, Adrian was between them, stopping her advance with a single glare. "You will not take one more step toward her," Adrian warned. Cassandra trembled with fury. Evelyn took a breath, a slow, unsteady one, and stepped forward. Her voice shook, but she spoke clearly. "Lady Cassandra, your cruelty shaped my entire life, but it will not shape my future." Cassandra recoiled. Evelyn lifted the will in her hand. "I will claim what my father left me," she said softly, "with or without your approval." A stunned hush filled the room. For the first time in her life, she saw Cassandra fear her. Dorian lowered his head, humbled. Adrian stepped beside her, protective. Evelyn stood straighter, and in the silent aftermath, society began to shift minute by minute, breath by breath, reorienting itself around a girl who had once been shoved into darkness. She was no one's ghost now, no one's secret, no one's shame. She was becoming someone, and Dorian, kneeling, stripped of pride, was becoming something else, a man willing to burn the world on her behalf. Chapter 9. Emotional Climax. The world did not stay still after Dorian's public bow. It tilted, shifted, fought against itself. Whispers spread like cracks through glass. A duke bowing to a girl raised like a servant? An inheritance scandal? Forgery? Society's beloved Cassandra exposed? Within minutes, Adrian's townhouse filled with tension so sharp it could have cut skin. Evelyn felt that tension pressing on her chest as everyone stared at her. Not through her. At her. Not past her. She had been invisible her whole life. Now the world could not seem to look away. Her fingers tightened around her father's will. Dorian stood slowly, rising from the bow that had fractured the night. His eyes never left her. No command in them now. No expectation. Only something rawer, deeper. Hope. Pain. Devotion carved from regret. Adrian stepped to her side, offering steady strength. "Evelyn," he murmured, "you need not face them alone." But she shook her head. "No, I must." Her voice trembled, then steadied. The room parted around her as she stepped forward, toward Cassandra, toward the matrons, toward the men who whispered behind gloves, toward the future that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. Her heart pounded, not with fear, with awakening. "I have lived my entire life in silence," Evelyn began, voice soft but carrying. A silence forced upon me by lies, cruelty, and power that belonged to those who never deserved it. Cassandra stiffened. Clara looked away. Even the matron's fan stilled midair. Evelyn held the will at her side like a sword. "But tonight," she continued, "I claim my voice." A hush fell so complete she could hear her own heartbeat. "My father did not abandon me," she said. "He left me a home, funds for my future, rights, protection." Her gaze swept the room, and Lady Cassandra hid them. Gasps. One matron nearly toppled. Evelyn turned fully to Cassandra. "You told me I was nothing," she said. "You made me believe I was a burden, a shame, an inconvenience to be locked away. But you feared me." Cassandra's face blanched. You feared what I might become if I ever learned the truth." Tears shimmered in Evelyn's eyes, but none fell. She would not give Cassandra that satisfaction. "You feared that if I had freedom," she said, "I would outrank your daughter. That if I had wealth, I would no longer bow to you. That if I had my father's name restored, I would be the one society welcomed, not Clara." Clara made a wounded sound, but Evelyn's gaze never wavered. "And you were right to fear," she said quietly, "because I am no longer afraid of you." A stir moved through the room, a collective exhale from those who had never witnessed such transformation. Dorian's hand tightened at his side, as if restraining every instinct to go to her. Evelyn faced the crowd next. "I have been called illegitimate," she said. "Ignorant, plain, unworthy of notice." She straightened. "But today, I discovered something far more important than gossip or cruelty or lies." Her voice steadied, deepened. "I am not defined by the woman who tried to break me. I am defined by the strength that survived her." A ripple of stunned silence swept across the gathering. Evelyn held up the will. "This document restores my inheritance," she said. "But it is not my father's money or property that changes everything." Her gaze swept the room bold, unashamed. "It is the promise that I was never worthless. Not to him, not to the world, not to myself." The matrons exchanged glances, some impressed, some scandalized, none indifferent. Evelyn took a breath. "And I will no longer shrink." Her voice rose, clear and emotional. "I will speak. I will write. I will stand before rooms like this and tell truths powerful enough to shake the walls that once trapped me." She stepped backward slightly, near Adrian. "Professor Thorne has offered me patronage," she said. "A chance to use my voice for something greater than silence." Adrian bowed his head respectfully. "I will accept." Gasps this time of admiration, even awe. Adrian's scholarly guests nodded approvingly. A handful of women whispered, "How brave." Dorian's face fell for a moment, just a flicker of pain, but he did not argue. He did not speak. He bowed his head. He stood humbled. Evelyn continued, "But I will not hide any longer behind anonymous initials in newspapers. I will write under my own name, Evelyn Ashdown. A beat, and the world will listen." Her final words seemed to shake the very air. Silence. Then applause. Soft at first, then stronger, then unanimous. The intellectuals, the scholars, the guests who valued mind over status, each one applauded Evelyn's birth into the woman she was meant to become. Cassandra's face crumpled in horror. Clara burst into tears. Two matrons left in a huff, scandal on their lips. Others stayed, impressed despite themselves. And then Dorian stepped forward. He did not speak loudly. He did not try to command the room. He simply looked at her with an expression naked of pride, stripped of arrogance, flooded with something painfully like hope. "Evelyn," he said softly, "you have become everything I always knew you could be." Her chest tightened. He drew breath, trembling slightly. "And I will go through whatever storm you set before me if it means I can earn even a fraction of the right to stand beside you." Tears stung her eyes, not because she trusted him, not because she forgave him, but because for the first time in her life, a powerful man spoke to her, not as someone above her, but as someone beneath, humbled, willing to climb back into the light, only if she allowed it. Adrian did not flinch. He simply observed, jaw tight but resigned. Evelyn lifted her chin. "I said I wanted truth," she whispered, "not devotion." "That is why I offer both," the Duke replied. She exhaled slowly, and then she said the words that pierced him like arrows. "Then show me." The room inhaled. Dorian bowed, not the bow of a duke, The bow of a man promising his soul. As long as it takes, he whispered. A chill wind swept the windows. The fire crackled. Evelyn's pulse thrummed with the knowledge that tonight she had stepped into power that could not be taken back. Her voice, her future, her identity. No longer hidden, no longer owned, no longer afraid. But the moment she had claimed herself fully, a new tension rose. For now, she had two men watching her with devotion of different kinds. Adrian offering partnership, respect, a future built on intellectual fire. Dorian offering redemption, passion, and a heart that had bled for her for years. But Evelyn finally stood as someone who belonged to herself, and the world would never forget the night she reclaimed her name. Chapter 10. Slow Burn Resolution. The night quieted slowly after Evelyn's speech, like a storm reluctantly retreating back to sea. Guests departed in murmured awe, some shaken, others inspired. Cassandra was escorted out by two matrons who could no longer stomach her presence. Clara's sobs trailed behind her like ribbons of pity. The house settled, the scandal simmered, and Evelyn finally breathed. She stood in the dim corridor outside Adrian's study, hands trembling slightly from the weight of everything that had happened. Her identity reclaimed, her inheritance restored, her dignity reborn. She was no longer the shadow girl in the attic. But there was still one truth left unfinished, the question of what came next. And two men were waiting for that answer. Adrian stepped into the corridor first. He moved with that quiet steadiness she had come to rely on. No drama, no possessiveness, just the calm certainty of a man who had nothing to prove and everything to offer. "You were remarkable," he said softly. Evelyn read the sincerity in his eyes, warm and unthreatening. "Thank you," she whispered. He hesitated, then added, "I meant every word in the carriage. My offer was not a flourish, it was a promise. If you want independence, I will help you build it. If you want partnership, I will offer it freely. And if you want neither," he inclined his head gently, "I will step aside with respect." Her throat tightened. "You are a good man, Adrian," he smiled faintly. "Then I hope goodness counts for something, even when competing with the Duke of Storms." She looked down. "It does." He reached for her hand, brushing his fingers against her knuckles, not to claim, but to reassure. "You have time," he said. "Take it, all of it." He bowed once and stepped back, disappearing into the study. Evelyn exhaled a shaky breath. Then she turned and found Dorian standing at the end of the hallway. He looked nothing like the powerful duke the world feared. His black coat hung open. His hair was mussed from running his hands through it too many times. His eyes, those storm-filled eyes, shone with something rawer than strength. Fear, hope, worship, remorse. He walked toward her slowly, as though approaching something fragile and sacred. Evelyn. Her name on his lips still felt like a tremor through her ribs. She straightened, not stepping toward him, but not stepping back either. "What do you want, Dorian?" He inhaled sharply. "Nothing," he said. "Not anymore. I came here thinking I wanted you to forgive me, to choose me." He shook his head. "But tonight you showed me who you truly are, and I realized something." He stepped closer, just enough to be near, not enough to corner. "You don't need choosing." Her breath caught. He continued, voice low and breaking. "You need freedom, respect, a life that belongs to you. And if I want even the faintest chance to remain in it, I have to earn that, not claim it." She swallowed hard. "And how do you intend to earn it?" He met her gaze with a steadiness that surprised her. "By giving you the one thing no one ever has." She waited. He said softly, "Your autonomy." The word echoed like a vow. He lowered his gaze not as a plea, but as surrender. "I will not pursue you. Not until you are ready. If that day comes at all, I'll dismantle Cassandra's lies, secure your inheritance legally, arrange any protection you require quietly, without demanding your presence. I will not speak your name in society again without your permission. I will not appear at your door uninvited." Her chest tightened painfully. Et continue. "I will tear down every barrier between you and your future. But I won't ask to be part of that future unless you tell me you want me there." The sincerity in his voice shook her. This was not the Duke who commanded rooms, not the boy who made promises he couldn't keep, not the man who once broke her by accident. This was a man stripped bare, no armor, no entitlement, a man who loved her enough to let her walk away. "Dorian," she whispered. He lifted his eyes, shimmering with emotion he did not hide. "I am not asking to be loved," he said softly. I'm asking to be allowed the chance to become a man worthy of standing beside the woman you are." The words hit her like lightning. She remembered the orchard. She remembered his whisper through the door, his bow before society, his confession in the garden, his trembling now. She took a breath and steadied her voice. "If I allow you that chance," she said, "there will be conditions." He nodded instantly. "Anything." She held up a hand. "Do not answer yet. Listen." He stilled. "I will not be someone's fragile treasure ever again," she said. "I will not be sheltered or hidden. If you walk beside me, you walk beside my voice, my work, my ambition. I will write. I will speak. I will challenge society. And you will not silence me to soothe your pride." "I would never." She cut him off gently. "Let me finish." He bowed his head. "I will not be your redemption," she said. "That is work you must do yourself without expecting praise for it. If you want forgiveness, show consistency. If you want trust, show truth. If you want love," her breath trembled, "then love must feel like partnership, not possession." Dorian's eyes glistened. "And most importantly," she whispered, "you will not compete with Adrian like I am a prize to be won." Dorian's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "You are not a prize," he said hoarsely. "You are the woman who shattered every illusion I ever had about myself." She softened, just slightly. "And until I know what I want," she said, "you will keep your distance, respectfully, patiently." He swallowed. "And if you choose him?" he asked quietly. Her breath trembled. She didn't know. She didn't know. But she answered honestly, "I will choose the life that lets me breathe." His face cracked with pain, real pain, but he nodded. "I understand." A long silence stretched between them. And then Evelyn said the softest words he'd heard from her since the orchard. "But I haven't chosen yet." Dorian's breath hitched. A flicker of something hope, unsteady but alive, passed through his eyes. Evelyn stepped back, her voice gentle but firm. "Good night, Dorian." He bowed not as a duke, as a man humbled. "Good night, Evelyn." He turned and walked away, each step heavy, controlled, determined not to look back. Adrian emerged from the shadows of his study doorway. "Are you all right?" he asked. Evelyn exhaled. "I don't know," she whispered. "But I feel free." And that freedom, uncertain, fragile, exhilarating, was the beginning of everything else. Chapter 11 Epilogue. 6 months later. London in early summer felt like a world reborn. The fog had lifted. The streets were bright with carriages and market stalls. And the once whispered scandal of Evelyn Ashdown had taken on a different shape entirely. No longer a rumor. No longer a cautionary tale. She had become something far rarer. A woman with influence. A woman with a voice. A woman with her own name carved into society's memory. The newly restored Briar Hill cottage, hers by her father's will, looked out over rolling green pastures. Roses climbed the stone walls again. Light poured through the windows like blessing. Evelyn sat at her writing desk, finishing the last paragraph of her newest essay for the London Review, this time published openly, proudly, by Evelyn Ashdown, on why society fears educated women and why it should. She signed it with a steady hand. The door to the cottage creaked open behind her. "You're home early," she called without turning. Adrian Thorne stepped into the parlor, removing his hat, a faint smile on his lips. "Your lecture was a triumph," he said. "People lingered, debating every point you made. Some were outraged, of course." "Then I did it correctly," she said, smiling softly. "You did." He placed a stack of mail on her table, letters from scholars, invitations to speak, requests for her words. Evelyn had not married him, not because she didn't admire him, not because he didn't care for her with gentle, steady affection, but because they had discovered something truer. Adrian was family, not a lover, a lifelong ally, a friend who sharpened her mind and steadied her courage. They shared a profound bond, forged in respect and tempered in truth. Adrian never resented her choice. He encouraged it. "I'll leave you to your work," he said, giving her arm a brief, affectionate squeeze. "And remember, you're due in Parliament next week. They're discussing your education proposal." Evelyn's breath fluttered with excitement and nervousness. "Parliament," she repeated. "I still hardly believe it." "You'll convince them," Adrian said. "You always do." He stepped outside into the sunlight, leaving the door open behind him. Evelyn crossed to the window, watching the fields sway in the breeze. A shadow appeared on the path. Tall, dark hair stirred by summer wind, coat removed and draped over one arm, boots dusty from travel. Her breath caught. Dorian Ravenswood. He stopped several paces from the cottage, as though unsure if he had the right to approach. 6 months had changed him. He no longer carried guilt like shackles or regret like armor. He had rebuilt himself quietly, steadily, without demanding her attention. In those months, he dissolved Cassandra's influence across London, ensured Evelyn's inheritance was secured beyond contest, funded literacy programs in her name, cleaned his own faults from the past, rebuilt bridges with Parliament, and, most importantly, kept his promise to keep his distance until she asked otherwise. Slowly, carefully, patiently, he had proven who he was when stripped of privilege and pride, not a duke shaped by lineage, but a man shaped by choice. He took a cautious step toward her gate. "Evelyn," he called softly. The breeze carried her name across the garden. She stepped outside. Her heart beat once hard. Then she spoke, without hesitation. "You may come closer." Something in his chest eased, visibly, deeply. He walked toward her until they stood only a breath apart. He bowed not as apology this time, but as greeting. "You received my letter?" he asked. She nodded. "Your reforms, the ones for women's scholarship funds, they're extraordinary." His breath shuddered out. "I wanted to honor your father's intention, and yours." She looked up at him. "You've changed," she said quietly. His voice was gentle. "I needed to." She studied his face, the sincerity, the steadiness, the humility that once seemed impossible. Then she said the words she had weighed for months. "I have built a life I choose. A life with my work, my voice, my freedom. And it suits you," he whispered. She took another small step closer. "And I want," she exhaled slowly, "I want someone who sees that life and stands beside it, not in front of it." His eyes softened. "I will stand wherever you ask me to." Her breath trembled. "And I want," she continued, "a love that is partnership. Not possession, not salvation, not regret." He swallowed. "And if I asked for the chance to give you that?" he murmured. "What would you say?" Evelyn lifted her gaze fully to his. "I would say," she whispered, "that I am ready to see what we become if we walk forward as equals." His eyes closed briefly, relief, emotion, gratitude, all trembling inside him. When he opened them, they shone with something profound and quiet. Reverence. He reached out and paused. She placed her hand in his. A choice. A beginning. Not an end. He held it gently, as though holding a future he would never take for granted. Evelyn smiled, soft, steady, free. Dorian breathed one shaking breath, and then he said the words that had lived in his bones for years. "You were never the girl your family threw away. You're the woman I fell in love with, and the woman I will never cease to admire." Her eyes warmed as she answered. "Then let us build a life where admiration and freedom are the foundation, not fear." He nodded. And together, side by side, equals, they walked into the cottage, into the summer light, into the world she had reclaimed with her own voice.